all hear us. So let's
Yay.
start. I'm really excited to be here. And we are here with Opt Out Orlando. My name is Kathleen Jasper, and I'm the founder of Conversation Ed. And we are so excited that you've decided to come to the webinar and get informed and learn more about high-stakes assessments and what you can do to boycott these assessments, because ultimately they are hurting our children. We want to make sure that you understand that this is not legal advice. We are not telling you anything legally. We just want you to be informed and then go out there and make noise and make sure you are heard. And there we go. Just want to make sure that you guys understand we are not lawyers. We're just concerned citizens like you. One of the things I want to talk about is I get to go out and talk to people in the news, and I get to go fly to Dallas and talk with Glenn Beck, and I get to do all these really fun things. And there's a woman that I call constantly when I'm about to go and do those things. And I don't go on TV, I don't spread my message, I don't say a word until I've talked to Cindy Hamilton from Opt Out Orlando, because nobody knows statute like Cindy does. And so what I want to be sure is that you all know that this is a team effort. There are a lot of people working behind the scenes. We work in conjunction with other groups within our own little communities and then slightly on the outside of our communities. And that's what we want you guys to do. I've teamed up with Cindy because we have a common message, and we know that together we are stronger. And so before I go anywhere, I talk to Cindy Hamilton. And without further ado, I want her to introduce herself and her organization. Cindy from Opt Out Orlando, thank you for being here.
Hey, I'm really excited. A big shout out to Michigan. I see Michigan flashing up and down the public chat. That's my home state. So hi, Michigan. I'm a co-founder. I have cohorts in Opt Out Orlando. We support each other. We've been doing this for about a year and a half. And I'm so excited to share what we know and to hear your questions. And I'm ready to go.
All right, awesome. So we just want to talk to you a little bit about what the objectives are of this webinar. We want to keep this thing streamlined. We know it's Sunday, and you guys don't want to sit here for 3 hours talking about state statute, because that just is not fun. So we're going to keep it as concise and clear as we can, and there are two objectives of this webinar. The first one is to educate you on high-stakes assessments, and we know that some of you are novices on this subject. And we also know that we have some people here that are already heavily involved in their own opt-out initiatives along in their communities. So we're going to keep it very concise and make sure that you know the basics on high-stakes assessments and what's going on in that area. And then we want to empower you. We want you guys to go out and take this information and get people to mobilize with you. We can't answer every question. We are not in your states. But we want you to take the message that you hear today and go out and mobilize, because a small group of informed people can really change things in communities. There's a couple of things that go on with the webinar. There are a few features we're really excited about. We see a lot of you have already accessed the chat. You're introducing yourselves from all over the country. We got people in Florida. We got people in Texas. We're super excited. So keep the chat going. You guys can help each other a lot more than just one person standing here telling you what's going on. Ask questions in the chat. We're going to be monitoring the chats, and we're going to take a couple of breaks throughout this webinar so we can kind of collect the questions, maybe the overarching questions, and then get those out to you as quickly as possible. We're also going to throw some polls out there. We're going to be polling you guys to see who you are. Are you a teacher? Are you a parent? Are you likely to opt your student out of high-stakes assessments? We're going to be asking you some questions to kind of gauge and take the temperature of our audience out there. And then there is one thing that we need to talk about, is the donation piece. It took Cindy and I a long time to put this on. We reached into our own pockets to buy the software for this. We understand that not everybody is in the position to donate, but if you are, consider it, please. We need all the help we can to keep this thing going and to keep these awesome webinars going so that you guys are informed. If you can't donate, that's fine. Just enjoy the information, and please, what we ask for the most is for you to get the information from here and disseminate it correctly. That's really what we're looking for. We'd love to have some money too, but if all you can do is go out there and spread the message, then we are so grateful for that. And if you give over $20, you'll receive one of these awesome boycott t-shirts if you want. We've got them in black and red, so you'll be able to pick out a boycott shirt. We've both got them on. Hang on, let me. Here's me. I've got the boycott shirt on, and Cindy, show them your shirt.
Oh, I have to sit up.
There you go, boycott. And it does have a fist in the bubble. I know some people were a little worried about the fist. I got into a fight with my dad about the fist. He said he would sponsor my T-shirts, and then he saw the T-shirts, and he was like, oh, my God, you can't put that fist on a T-shirt. And we had a lot of fun with it, but just know that it's a fist of solidarity. It means that this is not a suggestion. We are not asking permission. This is a boycott, and boycotts impact change. We know that in this country, and that's why we're doing this. All right, so those are the two objectives and the webinar features. Also, you will receive this PowerPoint in your email, and you will have all the information that you need. So don't waste a lot of time taking notes and trying to write everything down. This whole PowerPoint will go to you into your inbox as soon as this is over, and this webinar is available for download after. You can also see it on our site. So, you know, we want to make sure that that you get all of the information and that we're not reading off this PowerPoint. We're going to be interacting a lot with you as we go. All right, here we go. All right. People ask us all the time, why do we boycott and what is the deal? And this is actually a story out of Orlando, and I'm going to go ahead and play the story for you so that you can understand what's going on.
8-year-old Layla Gray started the 4th grade today at Pershing Elementary, weeks after she should have, but it almost didn't happen. When the new school year started, she returned to the same 3rd grade classroom she was in last year, while her twin brother went on to the 4th grade. The decision to hold her back came as a shock to her mother, Allie.
When she found out that she had to take the 3rd grade again, she, was crying bad. She was devastated.
This was Layla's report card from the 4th quarter of 3rd grade. All A's and 1 C in reading. She was being held back because of this FCAT score. She got a 181, 1 point shy of the 182 she needed.
It didn't sit well with me, and I felt like this is probably a good example of when high-stakes tests have gone too far.
Florida law says 3rd graders who score at level 1 in reading on the FCAT must be retained. Orange County School Board member Rick Roach says there are thousands of kids across the state like Layla being held back only by the test.
Something is terribly wrong with a system that allows that to happen.
That's why Roach reached out to State Senator Darren Soto.
Talking about a couple points, we really need to give these folks the opportunity to advance.
Senator Soto is trying to amend the law so passage is not all dependent on this one score.
Having accountability is important, but we do need some flexibility so that we're truly leaving behind the kids in 3rd grade that need another year while advancing the kids who deserve to move on.
In the first few weeks of school, Layla had a tutor helping her with her test-taking skills. She had the opportunity to take a benchmark last week, which would determine whether she could go on to the 4th grade. And Layla beat the test, needing a 33 to move on. She scored a 63, moving her into the 4th grade, albeit a month later than her classmates.
Plenty of other kids out there just like Layla, that do really well in school. They're just, I guess, bad test takers. It's not fair. It is not fair at all.
In Orlando, Caroline Rowland, Bay News.
Okay, so that's why we are boycotting high-stakes assessments, because of situations like that. We don't want any more 3rd graders being retained based on 1 score, and we don't want any more high schoolers being denied a diploma. One of the main things that's happening in this county and all over is that they're using one measure to assess students, and that's what we're fighting back about. That's what's happening here, and we just want to stop all of that. So we need all of you and all of your help. We need you to collect this PowerPoint and do your best to get out there and to do what you can. Cindy, is there anything you want to say about that particular situation with that 3rd grader that was retained?
Well, I can tell you that it didn't stop after that 3rd grader. That this past year it happened again. We had a case where this particular principal, same principal that Layla had, that just refused to do a portfolio. which is why it's so important to stay on top of it when you're in the process. And we can address that again some more.
Okay, here we go. So these are the things that you need to do before you boycott. There's a few things that have to happen so that you're ready to go. And one of the things that we are going to ask people to do is to read their statute. Every state is different. Obviously, we are in Florida. We're used to Florida laws here. But what we are talking about tonight will really resonate in all over the country. So we really need people to read the statute. The second thing that you need to do is to understand your district progression plan. Find out what test your state or district uses and really understand how that test is used. In some states, people don't retain third graders. In Massachusetts, they don't retain third graders like we do in Florida. Other states do. There are other states besides Florida that retain third graders based on a test score. You have to really figure out what your state is doing. You need to know your district's testing calendar. You need to make sure that you understand when the tests are being administered. You need to understand how many there are, and you will be astonished when you look at your district's testing calendar. You will really, really be astonished about how many days are used for testing. The next thing you need to do is go to board meetings. Make sure you're in there looking at the board, telling them what you want, making sure you understand what policies are being put in place. And then we ask also that you join a local opt-out group in your area. If you go on Facebook and you go up into the search bar and you hit opt-out Kentucky, opt-out Florida, opt-out Illinois, you are bound to find somebody with an opt-out group in your area. And some towns have their own, like we have opt-out Southwest Florida, opt-out Lee County, opt-out Orlando, so we have them all over Florida because every district is really different, so you need to get with people and get involved. All right, and we just want to clarify a little bit about what high-stakes assessments are. A lot of people don't understand the difference. High-stakes assessments are punitive assessments. They are used to damage students. They are used to hold students back. They are used to deny diplomas. They are used to judge teachers. They are used to just really make decisions that do not reflect well on a school or a student. And we are anti-high stakes assessments for that reason. And another reason why we are afraid of high stakes assessments and what they do to our kids is that teachers are not privy to these test results until long after the students have left their class. So these tests do nothing except assess kids, and then we don't get the data back to do anything with. And that data is used for various reasons for the district and the state, but the teachers, the ones that know these students the best, are not able to use that data to inform their instruction. High stakes assessments do not inform instruction, and that is where the problem lies. Moving on. We want to make sure that you guys all understand that we are not anti-assessment. Opt-out Orlando and Conversation Ed is not anti-assessment. We are pro-assessments that are used to support instruction, to inform instruction. We do not ever want people to think that we don't support teacher-based assessments in the classroom used to assess whether or not a student is reading correctly, and then that information be used later to help the student. We like those assessments. We want more of those assessments. What we do not support are the use of tests that penalize students. So there are two completely different assessments. And so here's where we want to kind of give you the lowdown on that. And this is kind of educator speak. So there are two types of assessments. There's formative assessment and there is summative assessment. Formative assessments are good. And you want to make sure that you can, formative assessments are assessments that are used to inform instruction. Formative informs. So, for example, a teacher gives a test and 30% of her kids miss one particular concept. She can then take the 30% of her students and reteach that concept so they get it later. Formative assessments, there's always redemption. Formative assessments are good because we want students to be able to correct whatever it is they don't know. These are good types of tests, and they are essential in the practice of teaching. The bad tests are the summative tests. That's at the end of the year when everything is done, the teacher's gone, the kids are gone, it's summer, and you get the scores back, and then decisions are made. Those are ineffective. They do not help students. They do not empower teachers to make changes. All they do is penalize, and that's what we are against. Remember, we are not anti-assessment. We are anti-high-stakes assessment. Two very different things. And why are they bad? Well, they're bad for several reasons, but you've heard me talk about this a lot. The amount of money that is spent on these high-stakes assessment is insane. And testing companies are making tons and tons of money. They are hurting students, and the profit is really off of the failure. There's no money in achievement. There's only money in failure. If kids start passing these tests, they don't need the tests anymore. We no longer need their services. It is a business model, and it's a pretty brilliant business model when you look at it. You've got kids failing. They have to retake the test. They have to be in remedial classes. The ones that make the tests make the books for the remedial classes. It just goes on and on and on. It's just a cycle, and it really does reap enormous profits for businesses. They are super expensive for schools, and they're unsustainable. We cannot keep up. They have monopolized our resources. They have taken over our media centers. They have stolen our internet. They have taken every piece of technology and used it for testing. And our teachers, they've stolen our teachers from us, and our guidance counselors. Guidance counselors are no longer school counselors to help kids with their problems. They're now testing administrators, and it's sucking us dry. We don't have the money. And all the money from Race to the Top that came with these assessments is gone. We are bankrupting our districts now. We might have gotten some assessments or some money back in the day. That money's gone. It's gone. It's all monopolized by testing companies. And it hurts students and it hurts teachers. And that's really the bottom line. That's as easy as you can put it. And a boycott is the only way to stop it. That's how you stop the machine. A lot of people ask, well, what about SAT and ACTs? These are voluntary exams. We are not speaking out against ACT and SATs. Although I have my own personal opinions about SAT and ACT exams, that's a different webinar altogether. If you are very serious about this, there are a lot of schools that don't require an SAT and an ACT score, because guess what? They're catching on to this. They know that it's not an accurate measure of what a student knows. But we're not telling you to necessarily boycott SAT and ACT exams, because we want to make sure that, if that's a route you want to go, they're voluntary. They're not making you take those exams. They're just going to charge you an arm and a leg, and they don't really accurately read how good or bad you're going to do in college. But that's another webinar. All right, and the next thing I want to talk about is high-stakes assessments in Common Core. I've been on TV with Glenn Beck, and I've spoken out against Common Core. And I have been talking to all these people about Common Core. And this is what really unites people on both the left and the right. The right has a certain thing going on with Common Core and the curriculum and all that, and I totally get that, and I completely respect that stance. And the left has, their own opinions on the Common Core. What we know for sure is that the Common Core standards will come and go. There have been 3 to 4 sets of standards in the 7 to 8 years that I have been an educator, come and go. So the Common Core will be gone, and something else will be ushered in. What you need to know about Common Core and state standards and all the different standards that have come and gone, you need to understand that those are just a guise to have more testing. There was a lot of testing under No Child Left Behind, and those standards were a guise for more testing. Under Common Core, the onslaught of testing is insane. Okay, so there are so many tests now with Common Core, and that's our position. We do not support the standards because of the amount of testing that is in with the standards, and the standards are just a guise. And to stop the machine, you have to cut the fuel. And so the fuel are the tests. The fuel is the money. And we are asking that you guys cut the money. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to do that. We're asking you to starve the beast. And if you want to change education, you got to starve the beast. And you do that by boycotting the exams. And finally, we have constructed a few things that you all could use to ask your principals, ask your school board attorneys, and ask your superintendents. I'm not going to read from this word from word. These are available to you on the PowerPoint. They're also on our website. I'm going to give you all those links to your inbox. You'll be able to access these questions to ask your principal. But bottom line is, you need to understand how many tests your kids are taking. How many tests are they taking? What is going on? What are they used for? Where did they originate? Who makes the tests? Are the same people making the tests also making the textbooks? Follow the money. You got to ask questions and follow the money, and you will be astonished at what's going on. But these are questions to ask your principals. We have questions to ask your superintendents, and we also have questions to ask your school boards. And these are things that are up on our website, and you will have this PowerPoint later. All right, so Why boycott? Let's recap real quick. We want to protect our children from being exploited. We are pro-teacher. We are Conversation Ed and Opt Out Orlando. We are not here to bash teachers. Teachers are being used in this game. They want their autonomy back. They want to do what's right. They've been intimidated. They've been scared. Your teachers are your resources in this fight, and we cannot do this without teachers. We want to give teachers back the power to say, hey, my child, or your child is doing well. Your child is progressing, but he or she may need to work on this. We want to get those relationships back to teachers. We want the autonomy to go back to teachers. We also want to reinstate our schools' resources taken by these testing companies. We want our media centers back. We want our resources back. We want our money back. We just want it gone. And we want to stop the practice of numbering our kids 1 through 5 based on their test scores. Our kids are unique in every single way. They should not be categorized by a 1 through 5 and then be penalized based on those numbers. We want to stop to that practice. All right, so we're going to take a 3-minute break. We're going to look at our tech stuff. We're going to look at some of your questions. We're going to answer what you guys have to say. We're going to throw up a poll up there, and we're also going to throw up some different things, donate buttons and all that stuff. But we have this really cool video by those guys that I found that seem to break down high-stakes testing. It's from a couple years ago, but it definitely breaks it down to what is going on. And we're going to leave you with that for a moment and take a quick break and collect your questions.
My name is Elliot Morgan. I'm Joe Beretta. No, you're not. Okay. The results are in, and Florida has some serious explaining to do. The FCAT, or the Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test, is a standardized test for students of the Florida public school system. Yesterday, the preliminary writing results were released, and only 27% of fourth graders passed with a 4.0 or better out of 6.
Those results are drastically different from a year ago when 81% of students passed the writing test. It dropped in 1 year from 81% to 27%, and 8th and 10th graders saw similar drops.
Shockingly, a conversation regarding kids failing at a test is falling on the test itself. One factor blamed for the steep decline in passing grades is new higher standards, because if there's one thing that we're not into here in America, it's higher standards. And now that so many schools are failing, remedial programs must be created, which, costs money.
An emergency meeting was held just this morning to discuss possibly changing the standards of the FCAT. Commissioner Gerard Robinson proposed lowering a passing grade from 4 to 3.5. That's a passing grade at 58%. But even with the new grading system, the amount of passing kids would still be lower than what they were in 2011. So they've lowered the passing grade to 3 out of 6 this year, which equates roughly to the same amount of students passing as last year. Standardized test my ass.
The new standards on the test included things like placing a heavier emphasis on things like grammar and punctuation. Wait, what?
So what?
That's so silly.
A writing test that vigorously tests your writing? That's ridiculous.
It's so absurd. In the age of emoticons and internet acronyms, a test that hopes to make sure students understand the difference between then, it's, and the differences in all the different theirs is a good thing. But another concern is that these results aren't a reflection of actual intelligence, but are instead the results of education officials being hell-bent on getting better scores for their tests.
Another angle is that the entire FCAT writing test is a huge waste of time. There are those who believe that you can't objectively test a student's ability to write.
And it's with a comma. No wonder the students are failing drastically when those in charge can't figure out how to properly score a test. All that said, the real concern here is that these scores are not artificially low, but that the previous scores were actually artificially high. And if that's the case, may God have mercy on our souls.
The whole idea of a standardized test is to test the objective knowledge and ability of students before allowing them to pass the grade. You can't have a functional standardized test if you are constantly changing the standard. It's right in the title, man.
Yeah.
Standardized testing. Standardized testing. There's a standard. It's standardized. You can't keep changing the standard.
So I grew up in Florida, and I took the FCAT multiple times, and I have completely mixed feelings about it. It was a huge deal in Florida where a lot depended on whether you passed. On one hand, I'm like, look, this is ridiculous. Kids learn in different ways. Teachers sometimes do a crappy job. The stakes are too high. We shouldn't hold kids to objective standards. On the other hand, everyone should know the basics. That said, maybe it's less about the testing and more about the teaching. If emphasis put on the learning process instead of the testing process, maybe, everyone will win, including the taxpayers.
Yeah, standardized test sounds great, except when it comes to actually doing it. And then you have the whole taxpayer dollar thing, and then you get all the cooks in the kitchen. And the standardized test never truly tests anything other than a couple crash courses the students take a week before the exam.
So what do you think? What is the best way to make sure that American students learn the basics all across the board? Let us know your thoughts on the matter in the comments section located in the southern hemisphere of this YouTube page.
And then we would appreciate some likes and some subscribing, and then you can click this annotation and go to SourceFed.com and see the 5 stories of the day are all the stories that we've ever covered here at SourceFed. I'm Joe Beretta.
I'm Elliot Morgan. I just Christmas tree all of it.
My answer was always me.
I just wanted to go ahead and answer some of the questions that I saw. One of the prevailing questions, or one that's pervading the entire conversation, is how do we legally boycott? This is a very good question. We're not legally doing anything. We're not asking permission. You're not breaking the law by boycotting. You are exercising your rights. So people say, are we allowed to boycott? That's not how it works. You don't have to ask permission. You're not asking permission. That's why the fist is on the bubble, okay? And it doesn't mean we're coming in with our fist raised and we're angry. We're in solidarity. We're standing together, and we are not asking permission. Cindy, do you want to comment a little bit on that and tell them how you feel about that? Because
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of people ask that question.
yeah, I think people are confused about it. First of all, what they need to do is read their state statute and understand what their state statute says in regards to testing. And for the state of Florida, it clearly states that all students must participate and all districts must administer. So again, you're being civilly disobedient when you don't follow those directions. But most states like Florida also offer alternative assessment within their state statute. Okay, so a lot of people ask, what does it mean? What does it mean to opt out? Opting out is really just choosing to not participate in something. A lot of us opt out of things when we don't agree on the politics. Maybe you don't like that grain is added to your dog food, so you don't buy that dog food. You don't like something about the politics of an organization, how they pay their people, so you don't shop there. So in this instance, we're talking about opting out of testing. There are two ways to opt out. One is to refuse to take the test on test day. That means your student goes to school, they sit for the test, but they refuse to take it. And the other way to opt out of testing is to keep your student home during that testing day, and you also then would need to keep them home during the makeup period, which in some cases can be extensive. Next, thank you. It's very important to understand what opt-out is not. Opt-out is not an easy way out for students. If you have a struggling student that genuinely needs to stick around in third grade for another year, opt-out's not the answer. It's not an attack on your teachers or your schools, and it's not a protest against using formative tests in our classrooms, which Kathleen talked about earlier. And it's also not a way to, it's not to avoid evaluating teachers. A lot of people ask for steps for opting out. Everybody would like it to be very black and white. Step one, you do this. Step two, you do this. So we've tried to put a few things together, and I feel like the first one is very important, because if you don't have conviction and know exactly why you're opting your students out, you're not going to be able to make it through the process. This isn't for the faint of heart. You have to know exactly what your convictions are. Are you opting out because you dislike federal intrusion on local government? Are you opting out because your student is a straight A student and they're a terrible test taker? Are you opting out because the tests are written to fail? Whatever your reason, know your reason. And then it's time to do your own research. It's great. People come to us, ask questions. Hopefully they're reading files, whether you're looking in our opt-out group at Opt-out Orlando or whether you're at United Opt-out. But you have to do your own research and figure out what tests are you going to opt out of. You can opt out of your state-mandated test. You can opt out of your district benchmark tests, and end of course exams are a whole new monster, and we can talk a little bit about that in a minute. Then you need to decide what kind of opt-out's going to work for you. And as we just looked at the previous slide, we talked about keeping your student home or test refusal. Could I go back one, please? You need to determine, do you need an opt-out letter? Specifically for third grade, you need to request a teacher developed portfolio to be prepared for your students starting at the beginning of the year. However, for other students, testing, opt-out letters are really kind of optional. You already know that you're not going to ask permission. If you send a letter at the beginning of the year, you're going to start the whole pushback process right away. You can let them know you're going to opt out, and this is what you expect their part of the process to be. If you're concerned about the pushback you're going to get, you can write an opt-out letter, but you don't have to do it this week. This testing doesn't really get geared up until spring. However, if you're going to opt out of benchmark testing and you've done that research, then you're going to need to communicate with your school. And then be ready for test day. Coach your kids. If they're going to be refusing the test, there's a process for that. They break the seal on the test, and they push the test away. The key, don't ever pick up the pencil for a paper test. And we provide information about how to opt out of a computer-based test in the documents. Also, request your alternative.
Can I just interject?
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to go a little bit about what you were saying with you don't necessarily need to go out right in there right away and hand them a letter. Sometimes when you go in misinformed or not fully informed, you start like a fire that doesn't need to be started. You don't need to start crying saying, you know, my kid's not taking these tests, and make sure you do your research before you start drafting letters and going in and telling your principal these things. Do your homework first, because honestly, I've been getting a lot of texts or Facebook messages saying I'm opting my kid out the first day of school, and I'm like, well, hang on a second, just do your research first. Figure out what tests are high stakes. You got to do some research here. You can't just kick the door off the hinges and knock the school on its butt. You got to work with the principal. You got to work with the teachers, and they might accommodate you, but you have to do your research. Sorry, Cindy, I just had to say that.
No, that's great. And you're right. People who don't know, who haven't really done a lot of research or aren't aware of what their district is going to require of them, they send that letter, and then immediately after they get the response, we don't allow opt-out. Then they come right back to us and say, what do we do next? So I see a couple of people here asking me to talk a little bit more about a portfolio. And it's coming up. So it's coming up. And if you want the 1, 2, 3 step, it's available to you. Okay, so here we have the instructions for a paper test, and I'm going to specifically address mostly what happens here in Florida. I don't think it's that different state to state. With a paper test, and this is really easy for an 8-year-old to do. They sit at the test. They're sitting there. Their test is in front of them. Here in Florida, 3rd graders are still receiving paper tests for another 2 years. So the test is in front of them. It has a plastic wrapper all over it. The kid sits down and rips the plastic off the test and then pushes the entire test away. And after they do that, the proctor or the teacher may come over and say, do you think you could start your test? And your student just needs to say, no, thank you, and move on. And you may have made other arrangements to pick your student up after the test window starts. It usually takes about a half an hour to get through this process where they've broken the seal. And you can address that with your individual school. Computer tests are a little bit different. With a computer, the computer program for the test has to know it's you sitting there. So you have to actually go through, in some states, in Florida, you have to sign a rules acknowledgement. And then they're going to give you a number so that you can log into the test, and the test knows it's you sitting there. At that point, you log in and don't answer any questions. So the important thing to remember here, don't answer any questions on the computer-based test. Next one. Sorry, this is, it's good. I got stumped. Okay, so once you break the seal, some schools will require the students to sit and stare. And these are itty-bitty kids that are still taking paper tests. So if you can work with your administration to make arrangements to pick your student up after they've refused the test, that's going to be in the best interest of the student. It's called sit and stare. It's not a good thing for little kids to sit there. They get antsy. They can get disruptive. Of course, that will also get them taken out of the room. Some districts accommodate this. Some schools accommodate this. The principal that we worked with recently, we just said students got a dentist appointment at 10 o'clock, we'll pick them up in the office. Worked great. Next. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the ultimate score. It's called the NR2, and the NR2 is what you get when you refuse a test. And this is no data. It's not a 1, it's not a 0, it's an NR2. And so when the student refuses the test, they get their test back scored as NR2. This means that the school and the district have no data to place your student next year. They have no data to retain them. They have no data to evaluate the teacher, and they have no data to be factored into the school grade. So if you can contact your own Department of Education, ask questions about if you're in another state, you want to ask, what is our non-attentiveness score and how do we get it? Believe it or not, we asked this question of Florida Department of Education, and they've been great. They give us very clear instructions about how to get an NR2. Now, they do often say, why would you want an NR2? And we're happy to tell them, because we're opting out our kids. Next. Again, this is about not asking permission. And a lot of people that are new to this, they write these nice letters that say, I want to know what you think about opting out my student. Don't start the letter that way. You want to start the letter with, these are my plans, this is my part in it, this is my student's part in it, and this is going to be your part in it. This is your right. I will tell you that if you include legalese, if you start quoting constitutional law, that letter is going right to the legal department of your district. So start your letters with soft language, specifically if you want a teacher to cooperate with you. You don't want to start making demands. You want to ask that teacher, this is what I'd like, help me out here. This is a plan. And I'd like you to follow my plan. You have to really do what's right for your kid. And it's going to be different in every district in Florida. And I'm sure it's different in every state. And here in Orange County, Florida, it's different at every school. So you start out making your statements clear, concise, but don't use rough language to start with. Next. Oh yeah, the low score. The low score is what gets you stuck in the system. It's what gets third graders retained. It usually leads to boot camp and summer school and more testing, because at the end of doing boot camp and summer school, a third grader has to take another test. So a low score is not what we want here. We want no score, because a no score or an NR2 will get your student evaluated in an authentic way and not with the use of testing. Next.
Hang on a second, one second, Cindy.
Sure.
I do want to go over that one more thing, and people need to understand, and you're so right about that. Don't ask for permission. You are doing this for your student. And I see some questions coming in saying there's no NR2 code in Illinois. I think that was the state. It may not be called an NR2 code.
Right.
So in Florida, it's called an NR2 code. In Colorado or wherever, I can't remember, it just went down the feed a little bit, but it may be called something else. What you need to investigate is, how do they score non-attemptedness? How do they score invalidation? Figure out what the code is. In Florida, it's called NR2. In your state, it may be called something else, but you're going to have to do a little digging in your state to figure that out. And I guarantee it's going to take you a while, because people are not used to this. This is a relatively new thing that we are exercising our rights to do. So they might be like, what are you talking about? You have to keep digging. There is a score for non-attemptedness on any test. When you break the seal and you don't answer any questions, find out what it's called, get some information on it, and get that information out to people. I'm sorry, that showed up in
No,
the
that's
sheet,
great.
and I didn't want to interrupt you, but I want to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's okay. When I needed this information for instance, for the process for refusing a computer-based test, I just sent an email to the Florida Department of Education in Tallahassee, and I asked them, how do we accomplish an NR2 or non-attemptedness? And they sent me back very clear directions. So if you're from Wisconsin or Illinois and you want to know what the equivalent of an NR2 is, send an email to your accountability and assessment office at your state capital, which is probably where your Department of Education is, and ask them, how do I accomplish a score of non-attemptiveness? This is their word, non-attemptiveness. It's not even in the dictionary, so I don't know where they got it, but that's what they call it. So just use that word, and they should be able to provide you. And every state has to have this because they are always going to have students that come in to the test and they don't know how to read it. They are incapable of taking the test. So every state has an equivalent to our NR2. Just look for the word non-attemptiveness. Silly word, it's just what it is. People asked earlier to further define a portfolio for third grade. In the state of Florida, the accepted alternative assessment to the state test is a portfolio. Now, Just Read Florida and the state of Florida defines it in two ways. There is a teacher-developed portfolio, which we feel is an authentic portfolio, and then there is the state-provided CD. And the state-provided CD is what many districts use because it's packaged. They don't have to do anything with it. However, a state-provided CD is a collection of regurgitated test questions for reading. And if a third grader is going to be asked to complete a portfolio with the CD, they can fail a portfolio, which is an oxymoron to the definition of the word portfolio, which should be a representation of their best work that's accumulated by the teacher and put into a notebook to be used at the end of the year. In many districts and counties in the state of Florida, they used to always do portfolio. So there are many teachers that clearly understand how this works. So you go to your teacher for third grade and you let them know at the beginning of the year that, oh gosh, somebody's given me information here on this board. Sorry, Sandy, I missed it. So you're going to go to your teacher at the beginning of the year and you're going to ask for a teacher-developed portfolio. And there is a criteria that your district will provide you with of everything that needs to go in there. So they request the portfolio be started. If you're starting to get a little bit of pushback at this point and your teacher's resisting or your teacher's saying, I don't think I can do that, I'm going to have to talk to the principal, start your own portfolio. Start keeping everything that comes home. Don't throw anything away. Make sure you read what requirements there are for your district. Look at the progression plan that your district produces every year. In the state of Florida, they probably won't be available until October. I imagine states aren't quite so different on that. They have to all submit them by October. The CD, somebody's asking me again about the CD here. The CD is FCAT or regurgitated FCAT reading passages, and the students do 42 of them for this kind of portfolio, and they have to answer questions and get them right or they fail the portfolio. So again, I think I've gone as far as I can go here about teacher developed portfolio. Read good cause exemption, read information about alternative assessments for third grade, find out if your district has listed a portfolio, what kind of portfolio they list in their progression plan, and if they require a SAT 10 or an Iowa test or some other test if the student doesn't take or fails FCAT. All the things we're looking at here are the requirements if a student failed, and we're just using them for opt-out. Also, 10th grade is the other high-risk year, And for 10th grade, if you look at graduation requirements that your state provides on the Department of Education websites, you want to look to see what the alternatives are. For 10th grade in Florida, they can use a concordant score for SAT, and they can use a concordant score for ACT. They can also use PERT, the PERT test for the Algebra 1 end of course exam. They're pretty good about making sure that stuff's clear. Other alternatives are going to be SAT 10 and Iowa test. You need to, again, you've got to become familiar with your district progression plan.
Hey, I'm going to jump in. Hey, I just wanted to jump in a quick second about the ACT. We've got a bunch of people down over in the chat talking about how they can take the ACT for a concordant score. And if there are any district leaders in this webinar, and I hope there are a few assistant principals and principals here, because what we really need to do is, if there's no way around this thing, allow students to take the ACT and push that further than just using the one FCAT. You know, I know a woman in Danville, Kentucky. She only uses the ACT for her accountability for her district. That's what she uses. They start taking it their freshman year. They don't emphasize it. There's a couple of courses they give as electives for that school. And, of course, it's a smaller county. It's not as large. She has a lot more leeway in what she can do. But she uses the ACT for her accountability. And so the kids take the ACT. They start out their freshman year. Most of them get the concordant score by their sophomore, junior year, and that's what she uses. And they don't emphasize nothing but the test. That's what they use. And so there are ways for districts to get around this without necessarily you know, screaming and yelling on the state steps, but there are ways to work with parents so that you are able to do alternatives besides the high stakes assessments. We're asking that districts really kind of embrace these alternatives, and we want parents to be knowledgeable about these alternatives and push for these alternatives for your kids if this is what's right for you.
Yeah, one thing I want to say real quick about using concordant scores in 10th grade is that you can actually take these the SAT or ACT anytime in the 4 years that you're in high school. So if you're thinking about opting out your student and they're going into 9th grade this year, they can take the SAT or ACT as a 9th grader and use that score to replace their FSA score in 10th grade. Also, they can, we sure don't want you to take the test in 10th grade, but if you take it and fail it, you can also use that SAT or ACT as an 11th or 12th grader to try and get that score up high enough that they are going to be able to graduate. I'm seeing in the chat here that people are asking about the Algebra 1 EOC being replaced by PERT. This is in the state of Florida, and if you would like to see it, you can go to the graduation requirement list by cohort. That means go look, if your student's a junior, go look at the junior level graduation requirements. It's right there in state tests required, and it says that you can use the post-secondary education readiness test, or the PERT, as a cover for Algebra 1. Next, please. Here we are. We're going to go back a little bit to portfolio. You're going to do it at the beginning of the year for 3rd grade because it has to be a full year representation of their best work. And again, we can't stress enough, keep your own record. If you have cooperation from the school and they say, of course we're going to do a portfolio for your student because you're in charge of your student. We know you're in charge of your student, so we're going to do what you ask. Please check back anyways with the teacher. Every month, just go say, can I take a look at that portfolio, and just make sure that it's being accumulated. And stay in communication with your teachers and principals. Most teachers and principals, they do not have a policy of retention for themselves, and they're often as confused as the rest of us are. Okay, this is going to talk a little bit about what our resources are. Good Cause Promotion is available on your Department of Education's website, and that's nationwide. And then you need to look at the statute regarding alternative assessment. And we have that quoted here. And speaking of statute, you need to start reading the education statute for your state, because it changes, and you need to make sure it's got the right year on the top, because a lot of times if you Google it, you're going to get an old one. I know Florida just changed our education statute to 2014. In the state of Florida, the number of the education statute, if you don't all know already, is 1008.22, and you should read it and you should understand it. Okay, this is something that I'm always amazed that even educators don't understand. I just went to a summit for Hispanic educators, and there was someone there that is a state representative, and he made the statement that you have to take the test because you won't get in college if you don't take the test. And he was really under the impression that colleges wanted to know what your FCAT score was, or what your ISAT score was, or whatever state you're in, that colleges really care. They don't care about that. They only want to know what your real work was while you attended school. If you're concerned about things like advanced placement classes, like for instance, if you don't take the state test in 5th grade, and your middle school then bases their decision for advanced classes on a state score, keep in mind again, you're talking about a score that's zero data. There is no data when you have an NR2 or whatever your state equivalent is. So, and you have to fight for that. If in their head that test that you refused equals a 0, it's time to get tough now, and it's time to know your law and understand the progression plan of your school district. Next.
Hey, I just wanted to go back and talk to people are talking about why is ACT, I hear ACT and SAT is going to be aligned to Common Core and all of that, and a lot of people are worried about this alignment to Common Core.
Yeah.
As an educator, and other educators will tell you this too, they're going to say things are aligned with all kinds of things. They're going to say, oh, the ACT and the SAT is now aligned to Common Core. That's a lot of jargon, and it may be, in fact, that the ACT and the SAT are aligned to Common Core. But the big reason why people use that term alignment is to make money, so that we buy the textbooks that go with these tests. Because people aren't going to buy the textbooks that are aligned with standards from the past. Don't get caught up with that. If you want to find a school that doesn't use ACT and SAT, there are plenty of them out there. They are going to say they're going to be aligned with the Common Core standards, and I know a lot of people get worried about that, but that is, again, a buzzword. And another thing that I was going to say, and now it escaped my mind, it was over in the, gifted. I had a couple of kids in my local area opt out of the test, and the assistant principal and the principal, this was a high-flying kid. He was gifted, and he wanted to boycott the test, and it was during his 4th grade year. And the principal and assistant principal told him that he would not be able to be in the gifted class if he was going to be boycotting the exams. And that wasn't true. They don't use FCAT scores or whatever scores that the new test will be coming down. They don't use those scores for gifted. You have to figure out what it is that those scores are used for, because they're going to throw it at you. You have to do this or you won't be able to be in advanced courses and all this stuff. Don't listen to that. Do your own research and say, oh, it's on my understanding that that score isn't even used for gifted. And that's why when Cindy says keep a portfolio, make sure you're keeping your students' work so you can say, I don't care what that test says. This is what my student can do. This is what my child can do. And so don't let them try to intimidate you in terms of, oh, you'll never be able to take an AP or honors class because it's only contingent on that. Ask your teachers what they think. They'll be able to tell you whether or not a student should move on or not.
I just had somebody ask me, they asked me for some more information about coaching their kids if they're going to refuse the test. I think there's a little bit of concern maybe about whether or not these itty-bitties can do this. And I'll let you know, I helped my cousin's son, who's 8 years old, refuse the test. One of the co-founders of Opt Out Orlando has successfully had her children opt out of the test. In fact, I'm pretty sure her daughter should be doing this instruction right now. you can work with them ahead of time. You don't want to create more anxiety than they already have about testing, but it's very empowering for an 8-year-old to know that they can say no to something. And you're not telling them to be disrespectful to their teacher, but you can sit them down at a table with a test that's wrapped up in saran wrap and with a pencil next to it, and you can go through the process if that's what you need to do with your student. You know your student better than any of us do, so you can go through the process of actually physically refusing the test, have the kid rip the saran wrap off and push the test away and tell mom no thank you, and that's really it for another 2 years for little kids. Now I think some districts are implementing computer-based tests as young as 4th grade this year. You're going to want to look at your state test and then just go through the process. Just tell them, go through everything until they ask you to answer a question, and then you need to be done at that point. We want to try to avoid keeping them home if you have concerns about truancy issues. That means that you keep them home on test day, and it could be 2 weeks or more, depending on your district, for keeping them home instead of sending them in to refuse the test. So just be mindful of that. Schedule doctor's or dentist appointments in that time if you feel that your student needs to be kept home. But you do not want to miss any more instruction time than necessary. That's kind of the point of why we're doing this. So keep them in class and in those seats as much as we can. Okay, now our next slide is what's the difference between a state prepared and a district prepared end of course exam. End of course exams are like the new monster on our backs this year. We've had a couple of them that were implemented in the last few years that we've had to take, whether it was to take and not be scored like geometry, or to take and not graduate like algebra. There are, in the state of Florida, and I believe it's pretty much the same everywhere, there are state mandated and state prepared end of course exams. Biology 1, Algebra 1 and 2, Geometry, Civics, and U.S. History are those end of course exams that are required in high school to pass or to take and pass. They're worth 30%. Actually, I'm sorry. Algebra 1 right now is the only one that's required to pass to graduate. But it counts for 30% of your grade. So if you opt out of that and you have a C, you could fail the class. So we need to keep that in mind when we're talking about opting out of end of course exams. That you can potentially fail the class if you don't take the test. You have to decide, again, this is all up to you. Is it worth it? What are your convictions? Go back to those convictions. Do you want to jeopardize that portion of your child's grade? Maybe your kid's an A student and it doesn't matter. The other thing is that each district is writing 800 to 1,000 end of course exams in addition to these state prepared end of course exams. And they will be from kindergarten to 12th grade. So kindergartners will take up to 7 end of course exams. I know that's been a big story. It's been all over the internet. Everybody's talking about it and chatting about it. But one thing you need to know is that your districts have control over these district written end of course exams in regards to the weight. State is mandatory 30%, but the state government has given the choice to the districts. They get to decide this. Are all these electives going to be worth 0, or are they going to be worth 30%? And so you need to be in communication right now with your districts if they haven't decided this. Orange County has. They've decided that K through 5 district prepared end of course exams will be worth 0%. Everything else is going to be worth 20%. End of course exams are not about the student. They are a requirement to evaluate teachers for performance pay. That's why they decided we needed all these end of course exams. The state originally told the districts, we're going to write these. I already covered the ones they wrote, and you're going to write all of these, 800 to 1,200, depending on how many electives your district has. But the Department of Education here in Florida also told our districts, and we're going to help you pay for those, but they backed out on that. So now districts are having to pay to have these end of course exams written. They are, the bank of questions are being written by teachers, and people can share the bank. So you need to get up on this and decide whether or not you want to opt out of these end of course exams. And keep in mind, if these do affect teachers. So when they're telling you it's going to affect the teacher, there is no NR2 for end of course exams where it removes all responsibility. So you need to really consider this and talk to your school board about this. They have control over what percentage they place on like 99% of these tests. So check it out with them. What did I miss, Kathleen?
And I'm going to interject here for just a second. When we're talking about end of course exams, and it's true that we can't really, this is the one that's going to be the most difficult to really opt out of or boycott, because these are the things that really have a lot of effect on teachers and students. But this is where you need to demand from your school board, from your districts, and from your state that these things change. This is when lobbying your own representatives in your community and getting loud at district meetings, this is where these things are going to change. Right now, the way it's set up, these are very, very punitive, and to boycott them would have an effect. But we need to still put the pressure on about these particular exams, because they do hurt teachers. We have teachers being evaluated in the most insane ways based on these end of course exams. And they do hurt student grades. A kid could have an A in biology and take this exam and drop all the way down to a C based on that exam. So we need to make sure that we are still, even though these are you know, they will hurt if we do boycott these exams, that we still keep the pressure on about these exams. And I just wanted to do a quick recap with the polls and the tweets and the chats. We got a bunch of people tweeting out. Our Twitter tag is #CE-boycott, #ConversationEdBoycott. And if you go up to the top of your little chat box up here, there's a little tab that says polls. If you click on that, you can answer some of the polls that we have going on here. We want to know who you guys are and what you guys are thinking. We want to take the pulse of what's happening out there. So please go there and check out the polls that we have uploaded and you know, answer those. And also, we want to thank people because donations are coming in. And so I'm getting updates on my phone, and I'm just very grateful that people have reached into their own pockets and given us a few donations here, because it's really great to be embraced. We see all these people talking and everything that's going on. It's really cool. All you guys are talking to each other, answering each other's questions, answering the polls, donating, talking. This is what we want. We want to build a community of people that have resolve in this issue, and so we're really, really excited about that. And you can see why now that Cindy is my go-to person, because she knows everything about every exam, every single piece of legislation. That does not mean to call Cindy in the middle of the night when you're getting ready to do something, or to privately Facebook message her and expect a response right away. But definitely revisit this webinar to look at what she's saying about these exams, and also revisit the PowerPoint that you'll get so that you can then be armed with that information and go back into your communities. But Cindy, I mean, she is phenomenal. She knows her stuff so well. And so we'll keep it moving, but I just wanted to take a quick break and talk about the polls, the Twitter hashtag #CE-boycott. Also want to say thank you for the money, even if it's $1, if it's $30 or $4,000, we're super grateful and we really appreciate it. If you donate $4,000, you can definitely get a T-shirt. We may even tie-dye it for you or something. And make sure you put your sizes in the comments section when you're doing that. All right, we're gonna move on. Let's go here. All right, you're up, Cindy.
Okay, I know I see on the chat people are talking about this right here. This year, with the new testing in the state of Florida, The new test is called the FSA. FCAT's still going to be used for 5th and 7th or 8th grade science, but we'll talk about the FSA. This year, we have received a reprieve by Pam Stewart at the Department of Education that the grades will not affect schools. They're not going to negatively affect schools. And it's interesting because they've released the schools from the grade accountability, but they haven't released the people in this game they're playing from accountability. So teachers and students are still going to be affected with the new test being rolled out during a year where they're going to count the numbers. There's a lot of talk right now in Tallahassee that some changes might actually happen before the spring. So please, again, we can't stress enough, you have to do some reading and keep track of what's happening. When we talk about school grades and the grades themselves not being impacted, they are going to allow the grades to drop by 1. So if your school is a B and you totally tank the new test, it could drop by the numbers to a D, but they're not going to let it show it for anything more than a C. And it doesn't, they think that's a big deal. They think they're being kind to you when they do that. But in your community, your school has a physical and mental presence. And dropping down a grade can affect property values. It can affect the way that new business looks at your neighborhood when it comes there. So this is a big deal. They think they're saving us, but it still could drop. We have no idea yet how this could affect FAM scores, so I'm not even going to speculate. And here we say, let's see, what do we say? Most states and districts have no idea how to deal with a boycott. Oh my goodness, they don't understand us at all. So just keep that in mind when you're talking to people, because a lot of times they get really defensive right away. Many times it's because they just have no idea what you're talking about. So they might in turn then give you bad information back. So again, research. You can't do enough.
And I'm just going to interject here for just 1 second. A lot of people don't know what VAM scores are. That's called
that's right.
If you're a parent and not a teacher or administrator here on the webinar, that's called the value added model. That is how they assess teacher performance, and it is a convoluted algorithm that is completely long and mind-blowing, and it's totally and completely, guys, it's totally and completely like convoluted. Nobody really knows, and it's confusing on purpose so that people don't know what they're talking about, so that they don't know how to ask questions. VAM scores are just the way they evaluate teachers, and again, she's so right about that. Districts are totally confused. Nobody's going to know what to do when a boycott hits. That's the point. We want them to be confused. You're the one that needs to be informed. You're the one that needs to understand what's going on and educate your educators. You know, if the administration at your school has no idea what you're talking about, bring in the document, show them what's going on, invite them to one of these webinars, you know, share the download with them, because they are going to give you misinformation, and a lot of times they will not convey correct information, and sometimes they inadvertently, you know, violate rules and violate laws without knowing that they are, because they're not as informed as sometimes the parents are. What we're going to do now is we're going to show you this quick video, and I'm going to collect some more tweets and questions. This video is really, really good. This just came out today. This was on Facebook, but this is another reason why to boycott. This is another reason why these tests are completely ridiculous. So we want to make sure that you know what you're doing and you hear all of these different stories, because the stories are really what impact people. We're going to go to the video now. We're going to take some calls. We're going to look at or take some chats and some tweets and all of that. Keep the chat coming, keep the tweets coming, and then we're going to come back a little bit after that. We're going to recap, we're going to mobilize, and we're going to get motivated. But check out this video right now about what has gone on here locally in Florida.
I think Jackie's been treated very unfairly. I mean, he came to this country 4 years ago, not really speaking any English, only knowing Chinese. And we wanted to mainstream him and put him in a public school on purpose. And he did very well. He maintained over a 3.6 grade point average the whole time that he was in school, and was struggling with passing the FCAT part of the English test. I mean, he passed the math portion of the FCAT the very first time, but the English part was much more difficult. And I think people just don't realize how hard that is for a person that English is not their native language. I think the law needs to be changed. The superintendent, the principal of the school have absolutely no leeway with the state statute that says you actually must graduate with a certain score. And that doesn't take into consideration anybody that has a very high GPA and does well otherwise across the board. I mean, he was actually graduated cum laude at Seminole High School, but that doesn't count for anything. What was really hard about the FCAT is Jackie, came in, got within 4 points, I think at the beginning of the year of passing the test, and then finally at the end of the year, after he was held up by all of Seminole County as the best ESOL student in the county, we learned that he didn't pass the English part of the FCAT by 1 point, which was very, very discouraging. And that, in effect, meant that he didn't get a high school diploma. When he puts many, many hours into studying and doing his homework, he was basically a model student at Seminole High School. It's much more than an inconvenience. It's an injustice in my mind.
We've got a few questions from people. They're talking about what if your school doesn't let you boycott, or what if your school threatens that they'll kick your kid out of school if they don't test? That's when you need to let them know what your rights are, and you may need to talk to an attorney at that point. You may need to go down to your district at that point, but they are misinformed if they are telling you that they are going to kick your student out of school if they are not going to take the test. That's just ridiculous. Again, we are not lawyers here. We are just telling you the information that we know. Obviously, if things become more heated at your schools, you may need to seek legal support, but your rights are to refuse the test, bottom line, and so you need to make sure you understand that. And again, you may need to educate your own administration in your own state as to what is going on. There's a lot of questions on EOCs out there, and a lot of questions on, the actual process of opting out. Again, you will get a whole thing about the process of opting out off of this PowerPoint. Once you get the PowerPoint, you will also be able to access that through conversationed.com. And Opt Out Orlando has a ton of resources. Lots of people on the chat are asking, hey, are there any opt-out groups here in Colorado? And some people are chiming back in. They're everywhere. There are people that feel like you everywhere, so get with them and get motivated. Remember, districts are more confused than you are. They don't know that this is coming, a lot of them. Some of them are bracing for it. A lot of them are working with us. Some districts are working with us, and they're saying, okay, let's accommodate your kids. If you don't want your kids to test, what can we do? Perhaps they allow them to go into the media center or do something different that day, but a lot of districts are confused. You can't be confused. You need to be clear, concise, and motivated to do this thing. And it doesn't matter how confused they are. You need to stay focused on your rights and your responsibilities as a citizen and as a parent. And so you need to get clear if they're not clear. You're going to get a lot of pushback, okay? We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars that we are trying to mess with here. A small group of people pushing back on this can make huge gains. It doesn't necessarily take an entire district of students to boycott the test to make an impact. A small group could really make a huge impact. But what's going to start happening is you are going to see companies push back, legislators push back, political people push back, because you are going to be disrupting the machine, and they don't want you to disrupt the machine. So you have to stand strong. They're going to say things like your kid's going to fail, or your kid can't pass the test, and that's why you want to opt out or you want to boycott. You need to stay clear. Share those experiences on Twitter, share those experiences on Facebook or here in the chat, hashtag CE boycott, and get some solidarity with your people, because they will push back. We're talking lots and lots of money. They're not going to just say, oh, okay, you don't want to take the test, we're going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars, go ahead. They're going to get angry, they're going to push back, and they have more resources than we do. I mean, we're asking for donations here for this webinar, and Pearson's got hundreds of millions of dollars in their pockets. They have PR people, they have tech people, they have all kinds of people. So it's not going to be easy, and we need to get clear on that and work together to make it happen.
Can I say something?
You know, some of the things you might hear from your school district is your child cannot be promoted to the next grade. Again, we heard from Cindy, that is not true. Your child does not, if your child does not have a test score, he or she will follow class placement and end up in remedial classes. Not true again. If you're keeping a portfolio and you have resolve in your position and you demand that teachers be consulted on whether or not your student can move on, those things, you know, a lot of people, and sometimes they give you this information because they think this is the right information. And it's not. They may be thinking they're giving you the right information, and it's just not true. Your child may not graduate or receive a regular diploma. Again, you have to have resolve in that and know what's going on in your state. They might say there's no alternative assessment to the FCAT or the FSA or the ISAT or whatever test you're taking. Again, not true. There's always an alternative assessment. And so you need to make sure that you understand all of these. Opting out may hurt your school grade. Of course, we heard this year it will not, but it may hurt your school grade. Here's the thing, and I always try to tell people this. There are going to be consequences. It's a boycott. It's not like, oh, we're going to follow every single rule and get this done. There may be consequences for your local school. They may drop from an A to a C next year or the year after if this boycott continues, and we know that it will. You have to be willing to take that risk, and you have to communicate with your principals and your teachers and say, look, it isn't personal. This isn't personal attack on your school. And the principals and the teachers and the administrators know that these tests are completely out of control. They know that these are wrong. And it's just going to take a lot of people to stand up. Teachers are going to need to stand up. I know we've got teachers in the audience tonight. They're going to need to stand up and say, no more. I'm not going to participate. I'm going to join the parents. I'm going to join the students. You know, and administrators, again, need to get informed. So they're going to push back. They're going to say all kinds of things. Don't listen. And this was the one thing that got the most traction on the Glenn Beck event. I guess I looked into the camera and said, people, you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And like it started getting tweeted all over the place, and it was really cool. And that's true. That's like the tagline. And a lot of this came from Cindy. I steal a lot of her stuff, and then I go out on TV and I like get a bunch of credit for it, and people tweet it. These come from conversations between Cindy and me. We talk, and I say, Cindy, I'm about to go on Glenn Beck. What do I need to tell these people, you know? And I remember we were on the phone, and she said, Kathleen, people are so far removed from what it really takes to make changes in their communities, in their states, and in this country. And people want to, like, sign an online petition and think that it's going to be easy. Please sign your online petitions because they are important, but don't think that that's it, and then you can lay back down and go to sleep and everything's going to be just fine. You need to stay strong, keep moving, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Women were punished when they tried to push back and get their right to vote. You know, African Americans were hosed in the streets when they spoke up. They didn't say, can I please sit in the front seat? They sat in the front seat. They did what it took to make changes. They didn't ask permission. So you have to understand, this is a revolution. This is a movement. This is not, I'm going to sign my local petition and then sit back and see what happens. You got to get out there. You got to make changes, and you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Sacrifice. These companies, again, are big. They are not going to go down without a fight. You got to fight in a peaceful, informed way. And there is nothing more powerful than a group of informed parents, a group of informed people that are come together and to spread a message, a peaceful movement, and that's what we're talking about here. And you need to be prepared to break the rules. It takes some rule breaking to make changes, definitely. All right, we are so excited. We've got some important links here. You can get them all at conversationed.com, boycott resources. We also want to direct you to the Opt Out Orlando page, and I'm going to put that in the chat bubble. I don't know why that's not on this last slide here, but it will be once I send this resource out to you guys. We're going to give you the boycott resources online at conversationed.com, and you can click that once you get this PowerPoint. We're also going to get you the Opt Out Orlando Facebook page and optoutorlando.wordpress. Is that correct, Cindy?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so we want to thank everybody. We want to keep the chat going for a little bit. We'll keep this up, but we're going to get you some more resources. So here are the things that you need to remember, the most important thing. You're not asking for permission. You are doing what's right for you and your students and your kids. You are looking and reading your own statutes in your own states. We talk a lot about Florida because Cindy and I are in Florida, so we are experts in the state of Florida. I am not an expert in Wisconsin, okay? And it's hard to be an expert in every state because everything changes all the time. Stay current, stay clear, stay concise, stay consistent. Attend your board meetings. Know where your board members stand on this. We have a local election happening here locally on Tuesday. We have board members in our district calling for a boycott as a district. Palm Beach County is calling for a boycott as a district. We've got very informed people talking with the Orange County School Board. We've got Joshua Katz running for school board, who is a teacher. He's actually a practitioner. He's going to run for local school board, which is good. Get with your teachers, get with your administrators, talk, communicate. You need to join an opt-out group on Facebook in your local area, or go meet for coffee. Go figure that out. You can always contact us on the Conversation Ed Facebook page, conversationed.com, Twitter @ConversationEd. We're on every social media outlet. So is Cindy. She's on Twitter. And really empower each other to make the changes that you need to move this movement forward. We're very excited. We had a lot of people here tonight. I think we were pushing close to like between 500 and 1,000 people. I haven't seen the numbers yet, so there are a lot of people here that may just be sitting back, maybe not chatting, but just kind of getting the information. So I want to be clear that we are so excited that you joined us this evening. Cindy and I are super thrilled that we were able to get this information out to you. She has a lot of really great people out in Opt-Out Orlando land that help her. We have a lot of people here at Conversation Ed helping us. I want to thank you again for all the tweets, the donations, the poll answers, everything. Thank you so much, everybody. Mobilize. Have a great night's sleep. Go get them on Monday. Thanks, everybody.